In this lesson, we're still going to work with the sum and difference formulas, and we will use them to verify identities and also to solve equations. We've seen in the last lesson we saw this, and that's the difference formula for sine. And what if we just replace the x with the pi over 2? This is the cofunction, part of the cofunction identity, so we can verify this cofunction identity just by using the difference formula for sine, because sine of pi over 2 is 1 and cosine of pi over 2 is 0. So we see that sine of pi over 2 minus y is the same as cosine of y, and that's the cofunction identity. We can use the difference formula to verify the cofunction identity. All right, so to do this, we only have different formulas for sine, cosine, tangent. So we need to rewrite this as 1 over cosine, and we need to work on the left side to make it look like the right side. So now we can use the cosine formula, which is cosine, we'll go plus sine, and that's going to be pi over 2. There's the x, pi over 2x. With the cosine formula, we change the operation, and cosine of pi over 2 is 0. Sine of pi over 2 is 1. And we're left with 1 over sine, which is cosecant. And you try that one. Pause the video and try that. So we just need to, we don't have an identity for cosecant, so let's rewrite it as 1 over sine and sine is sine, cosine, sine. With sine we use the same operation, and sine of pi over 2 is 1, cosine of pi over 2 is 0. So now we have 1 over cosine. Okay, so if we see sum, let's go ahead and use the sum formula for cosine. And it's addition, so we have to use subtraction, use the opposite operation. Cosine of 2 pi is 1. Sine of 2 pi is 0. cosine equals cosine. And pause the video, try that one. And we use the same operation for sine. Sine of 90 is 1. Cosine of 90 is 0. So we have cosine equals cosine. And now we have to solve an equation. We have sums and differences, so we'll just write out the formula and see where we get. Cosine, cosine, minus sine, sine. And then we're going to do it again. Cosine, cosine. Do the opposite inverse operations, so then we'll do sine, sine. And here we have pi over 3 is going to be a 1, 2, radical 3. So cosine is going to be 1 over 2. Sine of pi over 3, sine is going to be radical 3 over 2. Cosine of pi over 3, 1 over 2. Sine of pi over 3, radical 3 over 2. And we have negative radical 3 over 2, positive radical 3 over 2. Those will equal 0. And we go 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1. And then we just get cosine equals 1/2, which then we're ready to solve, and we have x over r. X is positive 1, 2, radical 3. Or we could do a negative radical 3 down there. But that gives us the solutions of pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. And try that one on your own. Pause the video. We're dealing with pi over 6, so we know that's going to be like that. And we will get sine as 1/2. Cosine is radical 3 over 2. Sine is 1/2. Cosine is radical 3 over 2. And we have a positive and a negative, so that's 0. It will end up being just like the previous problem. And we have a radical 3, 2, that must be a 1. So we know this is a pi over 6 or 11 pi over 6. And that's it for this lesson.